Why you should seek power, not happiness. The path to becoming who you truly are. What if the happiness you've been chasing was never the goal, but a quiet echo of your own strength? In this video, we dive into Nietzsche's radical view of personal power, not as dominance over others, but as mastery of yourself, from facing pain without flinching to overcoming who you were yesterday. This is not psychology that soothes, but psychology that transforms. We explore what it means to grow through adversity, to embrace suffering, not as a curse, but as a teacher, and to rise above comfort in pursuit of something greater. This isn't about motivation, it's about awakening and perhaps, for the first time, learning how to become the person you were always meant to be. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you live. When happiness is no longer the ultimate answer. From a young age, we are taught that happiness is the ultimate goal of life, that if we study hard, get a good job, build a peaceful family, and earn the love and respect of others, then one day, we will grasp happiness. From media and education to the wisdom passed down by our elders, everything seems to reinforce the idea that life is a pursuit of happiness. Yet few ever stop to ask, what is happiness? And is it really worthy of being placed on the pedestal of life? Nietzsche, with his piercing gaze into the illusions of society, posed a question that shook the very foundation of the values we take for granted. What if happiness is not the goal, but merely a consequence? This question was not meant to deny the pleasure of feeling good, nor to glorify suffering, but to emphasize something far more important. Are we chasing an illusion, one that society has painted with extraordinary finesse, in an era obsessed with positivity? Suffering has become something we are conditioned to avoid at all costs. Any negative emotion is quickly labeled a sign of failure. A stressful job, a challenging relationship, or even a sense of inner confusion can all be dismissed as signs that we're on the wrong path. But Nietzsche did not view the world through that lens. He didn't see comfort as the hallmark of a good life. On the contrary, he believed that resistance, both internal and external, is the soil in which true growth takes root. Happiness is the feeling that power increases, that resistance is being overcome, not when we are coddled, but when we surpass our own limits, when we stand firm after falling, when we prove to ourselves that we can. The joy in that moment is not the goal, it is the natural consequence. Like a reward that life gives to those who dare to walk through the darkness. Nietzsche was not against happiness. He simply refused to see it as the center of life. To him, life was not about feeling better, but about becoming stronger. And in that process, happiness appears not as something to blindly pursue, but as an unexpected light that greets us when we step beyond the comfort zone. And perhaps that is when we must revisit an old question, but from a new angle. Could life be more meaningful, not when we try to feel good, but when we choose to live for something big enough that we're willing to endure pain for it? Understanding power the right way. It's not about controlling others. When we hear the word power, most of us immediately think of domination, control, the ability to bend others to our will. In popular culture, power is often portrayed through the image of the ambitious politician, the overpowering business magnate, or the manipulative figure who bends others to serve their own interests. But Nietzsche held a radically different view, one that borders on the opposite. For him, the desire to control others is not a sign of strength, but rather the symptom of a weak soul. According to Nietzsche, those who crave to put others beneath them are often compensating for a deep internal void. Domination doesn't stem from real strength. It stems from fear of being left behind, from a lack of self-worth, from an insecure ego. The kind of power is shallow, fragile, and transactional, a form of power that distances a person from their true self more than it fosters growth. The kind of power Nietzsche valued was entirely different. Inner power, the ability to govern oneself, to transcend one's limits, to unfold one's potential. It is a silent but unshakable strength, needing no recognition, no submission from others, and relying on no weaker counterpart. An athlete who trains daily to expand their physical threshold, a writer who chisels every word with care and patience, a parent who practices emotional restraint to love their child better. Each of them is growing in power, in the sense Nietzsche meant. He called it the growth and expansion of the self. No need to defeat anyone, just to defeat one's own past, to be stronger today than yesterday, wiser tomorrow than today. That is what constitutes real human worth, not status, not admiration, but the capacity to live deeply, powerfully, and truthfully with oneself. In a modern world obsessed with image and validation, Nietzsche's perspective is a wake-up call. He did not urge us to become masters of the game, but to become the kind of people the game can no longer control. And perhaps real power isn't about making others fear you, but about no longer needing them to know who you are then. You control no one, but you are free, autonomous, and unshakable. That is power in its truest sense. True strength is the daily process of self-completion. Nietzsche believed that real power doesn't lie in having more, but in becoming a higher version of oneself. It's not some miraculous leap, but a slow, persistent process in which each small daily action helps sculpt a stronger, freer, and more resilient individual. Picture an athlete training tirelessly, not to outperform others, but to overcome the boundaries of their own body and mind. A writer who revises sentence after sentence to refine their voice. A father or mother patiently learning to manage their emotions in order to love their child the right way. These things may seem small, unimpressive, uncelebrated, but they are the purest expressions of power, in the profound sense Nietzsche intended. He did not speak of power as a position, but as a way of being where each individual constantly upgrades their capabilities, expands their vision, and achieves greater control over themselves. Power is no longer something to boast about, but becomes a quiet inner force. The greater it is, the more still it becomes, the stronger it is, the deeper it runs. Contemporary philosopher John Richardson clarified this beautifully. Power doesn't lie in living longer or having more, but in elevating life to a new level through greater control, higher capacities, and the act of surpassing oneself. Richardson called this process self-overcoming, a chain of inward-directed actions requiring more courage than skill, more depth than speed. We are not born with strength, but we are born with the capacity to grow. And in this volatile world, the strong are not those who always win, but those who keep rising, despite failure, doubt, or isolation. Nietzsche believed true maturity does not come from the outside, it grows from within. And so does real power. That's why, if we want to touch a life worth living, we don't need to have more. We simply need to become more than who we were yesterday, day by day, patiently, quietly, and without ever stopping. Rising above yourself. The true journey of power, true growth, doesn't begin when we achieve something, but in the moment we realize we no longer want to live the way we did. According to Nietzsche, power isn't found in how far we expand outwardly into the world, but in our ability to transcend ourselves, to overcome laziness, fear, self-doubt, and the outdated version of ourselves we once settled for. This is what he called the process of self-overcoming. It's not just growth, it's a transformation, from a limited way of living to one marked by deeper awareness and greater self-mastery. It's when you stop living purely on instinct and begin living with a powerful sense of who you are, of the choices you make, and of why you are continuing this journey. Self-overcoming is a quiet act, yet its impact is profound. It's when you choose to get up earlier to do the thing you've long postponed, when you hold your silence instead of lashing out, because you've come to understand that silence, not reaction, is power. When you write another page, even though your head is full of doubt, every such act is a step forward, not on a path someone else laid out, but on an inner journey only you can see. Nietzsche did not romanticize maturity, he laid out a principle. True power is a transformation to a higher state of being. It doesn't need to be dramatic, but it requires courage to let go of the old self, bravery to face your imperfections, and resilience not to turn back. You won't always feel ready, you'll be tired, uncertain, even convinced you're regressing. But in those very moments, if you don't give up, you are forging a kind of power deeper than any weapon or status could offer. Rising above yourself is not a fixed destination, but a sacred cycle. Each time you break through a former limit, you arrive at a new starting line, and that isn't something to fear. It's proof that you are still alive, still capable of going further than who you were. Everything begins with a chosen and meaningful goal. Inner development cannot begin if you don't know where you're headed. For Nietzsche, power is not just the result of action, it's the outcome of purposeful direction. He believed that to become stronger, a person must choose a challenging and self-driven goal, something large enough to compel growth, but real enough to reflect their truest essence. Not all goals are created equal. Some are imposed by society, studying hard to please parents, succeeding to be recognized, marrying by a certain age because that's the norm. But Nietzsche warned that if a goal does not arise from within, it cannot nourish the inner self. It only creates imitation, obedience, and eventually, emptiness. He proposed 4 criteria for a goal to truly generate power. It must be meaningful and challenging, not something easily attained, but something that forces you to step out of your comfort zone each day. It must serve well, being either yours or someone else's. A goal that leads to exhaustion, harm, or destruction, no matter how glamorous, is not the right goal. It must lead you toward personal excellence, not to defeat others, but to become the best version of who you can be. And, above all, it must be self-chosen, not assigned, not forced, but born from an inner calling, from what you truly believe is worthy. Nietzsche wrote, "Why humanity exists is less important than why you exist." In a time when people are easily swept up by predefined standards, that sentence rings out like a wake-up call. If you don't yet know the reason for your existence, create one. But never borrow a goal from someone else, for that is the beginning of losing yourself. Power does not come from going faster. It comes from going in the right direction, the one that leads you to live the most authentic, most profound, most worthy life possible. And that path only reveals itself when you dare to ask, "What am I living for?" and refuse to accept a cheap answer. On the journey upward, you will face real trials. Once you've chosen a meaningful goal, the journey begins. But Nietzsche's first warning is this: it will not be easy, because if it were, it wouldn't be valuable enough to make you grow. Any goal capable of deep transformation inevitably brings challenges, not just from the outside, but from the depths of your own mind. You will confront self-doubt. Some days you'll feel not smart enough, not good enough, not strong enough. Laziness will lurk in every corner, disguised as "I need rest" or "I'm not inspired today." You'll feel lonely, because no one truly understands why you're doing what you're doing. At times, even you won't be sure if what you're chasing is worth it. Nietzsche did not shy away from this pain. On the contrary, he saw it as an essential part of gaining real power. Because if you're not experiencing resistance, then you're not growing, you're merely repeating yourself in a new form. But the challenges don't stop at the internal. The outer world will test you too. People may doubt you, mock you, or try to pull you back into the comfort zone. There will be financial constraints, time shortages, declining health, or breakdowns in your relationships. Everything may seem to rise against you not because you're wrong, but because you are stepping out of the mold life has long cast for you. And that is when you must choose: return to what's comfortable, or persist despite having no guarantee that victory lies ahead. Nietzsche believed, every resistance is an opportunity to rise. Fatigue teaches you discipline, criticism teaches you resilience, doubt forces you to dig deeper into the true reason you began. Every obstacle is not your enemy. It is a challenge presented to prove that you are worthy of what you seek. You don't need to always feel strong, but you need to consciously overcome each layer of resistance. And in every slow, deliberate step forward, your inner power is forming, not loud, not boastful, but increasingly deep and unshakable. In the very moments when you feel the weakest, that's when you are building the truest strength. Adversity is not your enemy. It is your teacher. In modern psychology, there is a common trend of helping people avoid pain, soothe negative emotions, and return them to a state of balance as quickly as possible. But Nietzsche offers a different perspective, one that is not comforting, but deeply honest. If you want to become strong, you must learn to walk through adversity, not around it. For him, every resistance you encounter in life is not punishment. It is an opportunity for growth. Delays, criticism, failure, loneliness. Even suffering, these are the syllabi of a harsh school, where the reward is not a grade, but the capacity to live deeply and the resilience to endure long term. Nietzsche wrote, "The will to power can only manifest when there is resistance. It seeks what opposes it." In other words, adversity is what awakens the hidden strength within you. Without challenges, power cannot be activated. Without pain, the will cannot be forged. Just as muscles grow through resistance to gravity, the soul grows by facing pressure and conflict head-on. In a world that relentlessly seeks comfort, this idea may sound cruel, but if you look closely, every great individual in history, philosophers, artists, warriors, even silent parents, shares one trait. They walked through adversity instead of avoiding it. They understood that the moments they most wanted to give up were the very moments in which strength they never knew they had was being born. Nietzsche did not glorify meaningless suffering. He did not promote pain for its own sake. What he emphasized was this: pain only becomes poison when we reject it, but when we accept and transcend it, it becomes the antidote to mediocrity. When you accept adversity as part of the journey, you stop blaming life. You stop seeing obstacles as curses and start viewing them through the eyes of a student. This is my lesson, and I will learn it fully. From that moment on, you are no longer someone being swept away by circumstances. You become someone who uses those very circumstances to grow. No strong person is born from a smooth path, and neither are you. If you find yourself in the middle of a storm today, don't rush to escape. Stand firm, face it, and ask, who will I become after this storm passes? Because sometimes the harshest teacher gives you the deepest lesson about yourself. Play the game between obstacles and victory. To grow, Nietzsche called it the game of resistance and conquest, an endless chain of one challenge after another, where each time you overcome one obstacle, another appears. But instead of seeing that as draining, he saw it as the essence of real life. To live is to constantly overcome. Life is a game without a final round, but the more you play, the more you become yourself. Unlike the common belief that an ideal life is one of peace and ease, Nietzsche pointed out that absolute peace is the death of the will. A life without obstacles is a life without the urge to rise. It is precisely the obstacles, with their unpredictability, pain, and difficulty, that give each victory meaning. And that's why a deep soul doesn't seek the easiest path, but seeks the game that's hard and worthy. In this game, each victory is not an ending. It is merely the beginning of a new challenge, a higher ascent, where more subtle limits will emerge. Nietzsche did not see this as tragic, but as the mark of a maturing soul. The greater the person, the higher their goals. Those who demand more from themselves are the ones truly alive. And here's the strange thing. When you enter the cycle of resistance and conquest with a willing heart, you begin to love the difficulty itself. It's no longer just endurance. You actively seek out challenges because you realize, without obstacles, you have no reason to grow. Today's psychology calls this a growth mindset, but Nietzsche said it more than a century ago. Human beings were not made to stay put, but to surpass themselves, and power, in its deepest form, is not something you achieve and keep. It is a process. Each time you overcome something, you recreate yourself anew. This game is not easy. You'll get tired, you'll fall, but every time you get up, you'll notice you're no longer the same, stronger, clearer, quieter, deeper. And the best part is, you don't need anyone to recognize it, because you, through every battle, can feel it, who you are becoming. And that's enough. Don't stop. When you achieve, keep reaching further. There is a subtle illusion that many people fall into. The idea that once they achieve what they once dreamed of, a dream job, an admirable position, an ideal self-image, the journey is over. That once you're successful, you'll finally feel peaceful, fulfilled, and no longer need to strive. But Nietzsche warned, that feeling of enough is the beginning of stagnation, complacency, and inner decay. According to Nietzsche, a person truly animated by the will to power never stops at what they've created, even if it's something they once deeply desired and cherished, because power doesn't lie in achievement, but in the drive to continually rise beyond oneself. He wrote, "No matter how much I love what I have created, sooner or later, I must overcome it." This may sound harsh. Why let go of what you've worked so hard to build? But this isn't about abandoning. It's about a law of the soul in motion. When you reach a peak, it means you now have the ability to see a higher one, loftier, deeper, more demanding. And it is in daring to release comfort that an internal leap is born. If you continue to cling to the old just because it was once a goal, you are blocking your own growth. What was once a dream will become a burden if you don't dare move forward. And the danger is the gap between "this is enough" and "I feel dead inside" is frighteningly small. Nietzsche didn't celebrate dissatisfaction. He celebrated honesty, with the rhythm of the soul always reaching higher, even when no one asks you to. It is this ceaseless movement that keeps the will to live fresh and gives a person a reason to go on, not as a shadow of past glory, but as someone who endlessly recreates themselves. Power has no destination. It is a circle of rebirth. We often imagine life as a straight line. We begin, we strive, we achieve something, and then we rest. But for Nietzsche, life does not unfold that way. It is a circle, no end, no final stop, only a continuous cycle of action, challenge, overcoming, and then action again. And within that circle, power is not something you accumulate, but the rhythm you live by. Nietzsche wrote that the will to power is a cycle with no ultimate goal, unless you consider joy within the movement itself to be the goal. This may sound paradoxical, but it contains a deep truth. When you commit to the journey of becoming a stronger human being, you stop asking, "When will I arrive?" Because you know there is no arrival. There is only each day in which you become different, greater, deeper, and more authentic. You overcome one challenge, only to face another. You love what you've just created, only to leave it behind, to create something new. Each victory gives birth to another battle. The version of yourself you cherish today becomes an outdated shadow tomorrow, unless you continue to evolve. This is not endless exhaustion. It is the sign that you are truly alive. In this circle, there is pain, but also joy. There is falling, but also fierce recovery. There is repetition, but never sameness, because each time you return to a familiar place, you are someone else with new depth and new strength. Nietzsche did not promise paradise. He did not preach a glorious ending. What he offered was a rhythm of life, a way of existing with intensity, where you do not wait for rewards, because transformation itself is the reward. And in that circle, every step forward doesn't take you away from yourself. It brings you closer to a self constantly being reborn. Happiness is not the destination. It's a sign that you're growing stronger. If you ask a random person, "What do you live for?" many will answer, "For happiness." But Nietzsche was not satisfied with that answer, not because he denied the pleasantness of joy, but because he believed happiness should not be the goal for him. Happiness is not something to pursue. It is something that happens when you are living in alignment with your inner strength. Happiness, he wrote, is the feeling that power is increasing, that a resistance has been overcome. In that sentence, Nietzsche doesn't define happiness as comfort or peace, but as a sign that you are developing, that you are becoming stronger. It doesn't come when everything goes your way. It comes in the moment you realize you've just conquered something that once frightened you, held you back, or made you feel powerless. Happiness, in this sense, cannot be forced. You cannot sit still and hope to feel happier. What you can do is move toward resistance, face the challenge, accept the instability, and then joy will emerge naturally, like a ray of sunlight at the end of the day. No one commands it to appear, but it comes when you've walked far enough away from the dark. Nietzsche also wrote, "Joy is merely a symptom of attained power. One does not pursue joy. Joy follows." That sentence underscores a powerful truth. Real joy comes only when you stop using your life to chase it. Instead, you live for something worthy and let joy find you, quietly, as an unnamed reward. If you feel lost or empty, even while living in seemingly ideal conditions, it may not be because you lack happiness, but because you lack a journey that calls you to grow. And if you're in the middle of resistance, tired from the daily struggle, don't blame life, because it may very well be that you are nearing a kind of happiness deeper than anything you felt before, the happiness of knowing you are getting stronger. Nietzsche and the existential answer to human suffering. No one lives without suffering, but the real question is not, how can we escape suffering? It is, how can suffering become meaningful? That's the question Nietzsche posed, not as a detached philosopher, but as someone who had lived through illness, isolation, and deep inner crisis. For him, suffering was not something to be removed from life, but something to be understood and transformed. Nietzsche wrote, "Man does not repudiate suffering, he is even ready to welcome it, provided it is shown to have meaning. The unendurable is not suffering, but meaningless suffering." This statement overturns the modern belief that a good life is one with the least pain. On the contrary, Nietzsche believed, life only becomes truly valuable when the suffering within it serves a purpose greater than the pain itself. Throughout history, humans have tried to make sense of suffering by inventing true worlds, heaven, the afterlife, ideal societies, final justice. Religious, philosophical, and political systems alike have promised, if you endure today, you will be rewarded tomorrow. But Nietzsche called this the trap of blind belief, because all those true worlds lead people to devalue the present, to live as if this life were just a waiting room, and in doing so, they reject the true worth of existence itself. Nietzsche offered no replacement paradise. He simply invited us to return to this world, the world of bodies, hardship, effort, and conscious action. If we define power as the capacity to overcome ourselves, then suffering is no longer the enemy, it is a necessary part of the journey to becoming. Just as fire blazes higher when the wind blows, we grow only when we dare to walk through darkness. If you are suffering, Nietzsche doesn't ask you to erase it. He simply asks, can you assign it a meaning large enough to keep moving forward? If so, then that pain, though it still hurts, has become a lever for awakening. And in that moment, you are no longer a victim of life. You are the one transforming suffering into strength through the depth of your awareness and the courage of your existence. When you surpass yourself, you touch the deepest joy. Nietzsche once wrote, "Life whispered a secret to me. You are something that must constantly be overcome." This is not just a philosophy, but a way of life, a reminder that you have never been your final version. And only when you dare to cross the threshold of safety do you truly touch a form of joy that no comfort can ever offer. We often think happiness comes from holding on to what we love: stability, self-image, familiar habits, but Nietzsche said the opposite. The deepest joy does not come from preservation, but from transcendence, transcending the old self, transcending the fear of being wrong, transcending what once made us proud, but now no longer helps us grow. The moment you let go of a victory to begin a new journey, when you step away from a role that once earned admiration, when you whisper to yourself, "I can be more than this," that is when you stop living to please the world and begin living to become someone deeper than who you were yesterday. And there, you no longer need many reasons to keep going. No need for rewards, no need for applause, because joy has become part of the transformation itself. Not flashy, not dramatic, but deeply real. It is the joy of a soul that knows it is on the right path, even if that path is winding and lonely. Nietzsche called it the joy of the circle, a joy that does not come once and disappear, but returns again and again. Each time you break through a new limit, it doesn't explode like fireworks, but glows like embers, keeping you alive in awareness. Even if the world around you sleeps. And if you are in a difficult chapter right now, maybe this is not the time to seek pleasant happiness. Maybe it's the time to ask in silence, what am I overcoming and who am I becoming? Because in the moment you surpass who you were yesterday, you have touched the deepest joy a human can feel, the joy of a soul living in alignment with its sacred mission to grow. Psychology is not meant to make you comfortable, but to make you stronger. In the modern world, when people hear the word psychology, they often think of feeling better. They turn to therapy to ease anxiety, to meditation to calm the mind, to self-help books for upliftment. Not wrong, but not enough. Nietzsche would look at this and ask, do you want to feel better? Or do you want to become stronger? Healing is not about soothing every pain. Psychology should not be reduced to a tool for comfort. Nietzsche believed humans were not born to be shielded from suffering, but to learn how to overcome it. And psychology, if it only focuses on comfort, may actually weaken the innate survival will within each person. What's truly frightening is not suffering. What's frightening is when we lose the capacity to endure it. When we stop believing we can walk through it without falling apart. Nietzsche called that a sign of a decaying culture where people no longer grow through adversity, but only learn to avoid intense emotion. In truth, many today misunderstand inner strength. They think it means calmness, unshakable tranquility. But Nietzsche revealed a different truth. Inner strength is the ability to remain with the pain without letting it destroy you. It is the capacity to look directly at fear without turning away. It is the courage to feel your emotions fully without covering them up with instant doses of dopamine. Real psychology does not immediately soothe you, on the contrary. It may leave you torn, shaken, doubting everything you once believed, but Nietzsche argued, that is the first step of transformation. Because if you're not shaken, how could you ever rebuild yourself? Ultimately, psychology is not a lullaby. It is a wake-up call. It does not lead you to peace by denying the truth, but takes you to a deeper peace where you no longer fear pain, because you've learned how to walk through it on your own 2 feet. And perhaps that is the highest form of psychological therapy, not making you feel better, but making you unshakable completely, profoundly, and without clinging to any illusion. Inner awakening, when you no longer need the world to save you. Deep within every human being is a longing to be saved, to have someone pull us out of our pain, show us the right way, help us find peace. The world offers no shortage of promises. Religion promises heaven. Politics promises utopia. Science promises ultimate control. But Nietzsche warned, the moment you place your hope of salvation in something outside yourself, you have given up your greatest power, the power to overcome. Nietzsche did not offer a belief system to cling to, nor did he deny the value of faith. But he placed emphasis on something more essential: personal will. No one, not even gods, philosophers, or therapists, can live your life for you, and no one can make you grow unless you choose to walk the path yourself. Inner awakening begins when you stop running from yourself and start living as if the entire meaning of life depends on the choices you make today. This does not mean you don't need anyone, but it does mean you stop waiting for someone to rescue you before you begin to live. You no longer blame the world for what you lack, nor fate for what you've lost. Instead, you start to ask, if everything I need is already within me, what must I do to awaken it? Awakening is not a dazzling moment. It does not arrive with thunder or blinding light. It comes in silence, when you face your wounds without flinching, when you accept your true self without shame, when you stop asking, why is life like this, and begin to ask, how will I live from here? Nietzsche once wrote, become who you are, not the perfect one, not the most loved one, but the truest version that life has planted within you. And when you embark on that path, a path no longer defined by the outside world, you are not just awakened. You have saved yourself. No longer begging for peace, no longer waiting for miracles, because you have become the miracle, a soul walking on its own 2 feet through this world, whole and free.